Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Developmental Psychology edition of 5 Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll look at cognitive development, starting with 2 processes that Piaget believed led to cognitive growth. Then we'll look at Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive development before we evaluate Piaget's theory. Jean Piaget was working on early IQ tests, and while everyone else was focused on what questions children were getting right, Piaget was interested in what kids got wrong, and he noticed some consistencies in the errors that children of certain ages were making. Noticing this led to his entire theory about how children of different ages have different ways of thinking. So how does our thinking change as we age? Well, Piaget believed that there are 2 processes of cognitive change, assimilation and accommodation. With assimilation, we try to fit a new experience into what we already know. For example, suppose a child sees a cow for the first time, and not knowing what a cow is, the child tries to fit the cow with something that they already understand, like thinking maybe it's a horse. After all, it has 4 legs, it's large, has fur, found in a field, must be a horse. But closer inspection would show that this new thing is different from a horse. You can't ride it, it says moo, and it gives us milk. If assimilation doesn't work, then we turn to accommodation, where we change what we know to fit with this new experience. Now the child would form a new concept of cow, and they would likely sharpen up their concept of horse too. Piaget believed that cognitive growth happened through assimilation and accommodation, advancing us through 4 stages of cognitive development. The first stage, the sensory motor stage, lasts until 2 years of age, and children in this stage are all about understanding the world through their senses and physical interactions. Now they begin to realize that they can make things happen: bang, crash, drop, or splash. At around 6 to 8 months of age, infants acquire object permanence, where they now believe that an object continues to exist even if they can't see it anymore. I know this doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really is, because it's the beginning of symbolic thought. Now the infant isn't tied to their sensory world anymore, and they can start to represent things that they can't touch and see. This is the first step in being able to use language. So yeah, having object permanence is huge. The next stage, the pre-operational stage, lasts from 2 to about 7 years of age, and this stage is where language really takes off. This ease with symbolic thought allows the child to engage in pretend play and also to think about the consequences of their actions. But they still show some errors in thinking. For one, they don't understand conservation, or the idea that the quantity of something may not change despite changes in physical appearance. For instance, if you had 2 rows of marbles and asked the child if each row had the same amount, the child would agree that yes, they did. But then if you spread the marbles out in row B and ask the child again, now they're likely to say that row B has more. In this stage, children tend to focus on one feature, in this case length and not number, because they can't hold 2 things in mind at once. They also display egocentrism, where they can't see any perspective besides their own, likely caused by not being able to imagine another's viewpoint at the same time that they have their own viewpoint. Children here may not understand that everyone doesn't know the song that their teacher sings to them every day. In the concrete operational stage, children from 7 to 11 years can now overcome those conservation errors, and they don't suffer from egocentrism anymore either. They can perform basic mental operations that involve tangible problems and situations, but they have difficulty with the abstract. Things like algebra would be difficult here, where you have to be willing to believe that X, a letter, could represent a range of different numbers. In the formal operational stage from 11 years onward, children now can think about problems abstractly and hypothetically. They can consider multiple scenarios at the same time and weigh many pros and cons to arrive at the best decision. Piaget thought about cognitive development in a new way and stimulated tons of research from his theory. But others found that children much younger than what Piaget believed were able to do his tasks, especially if the children weren't asked to verbally explain their answers, as Piaget had required them to do. Findings like this led others to question the ages in Piaget's theory and whether he was testing cognitive ability or language ability. Finally, the current consensus is that cognitive development doesn't change in stages, but develops more continuously. Well, we just discussed cognitive development by starting with a discussion about the 2 processes that Piaget believed led to cognitive growth. Then we examined Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive development before we ended with an evaluation of Piaget's theory. Now, aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?